Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Back in 1991, an innovative program began in Burlington. The concept was simple: repair and resell household items that otherwise would have gone to the landfill. 27 years later, ReSOURCE has expanded its services, including a successful job skills training program. This afternoon, we'll learn more about ReSOURCE and its presence in Barrie, Hyde Park, Williston, and Burlington. Joining me are two guests. Thomas Longstreth is the Executive Director of ReSOURCE, and Andrew Joe heads the Youth Build program. I want to thank you both for coming in.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so ReSOURCE isn't new. In fact, some viewers may remember how it got started.
Yeah, well, it started in 1990, was incorporated in 1991. Ron Krupp was the founder, and his vision has really stayed true. I mean, it's still our mission. Is really, he saw this huge waste of material things, and at the time there was a huge crisis of homelessness, not too different than challenges we face today. But he wanted to marry these two problems and create a solution, and that was really how then Recycle North was born. We changed our name 6-7 years ago to ReSOURCE, a nonprofit community enterprise, to better represent all the different things we do, not just the keep the material side of it, and really talk about the less waste, more opportunity that we really strive to achieve. But, so that's the roots, really trying to create opportunities for people by keeping things out of the landfill, protecting the environment. It's really these three elements: to reduce poverty, train people for new jobs, new skills, and protect the environment.
And so how has ReSOURCE's mission grown since the beginning?
I think it's what's really changed. The core piece has stayed consistent. That's the synergies between these three parts of the mission. Mm-hmm. I think the scope of our work has changed. So it started with programs that worked exclusively with homeless individuals, and the number of and groups of people who need help to get jobs, to be trained, to be gainfully contributing to society. That is what is really how we've evolved the programs and developed them. So, it started with homeless individuals, expanded to folks who were on public assistance. In 2004, we took on the Youth Build program, which Andrew is going to talk some more about, but that's 16 to 24-year-olds who are all high school dropouts. And more recently, we've expanded programs to really serve people with disabilities, both blind and visually impaired individuals, and others with disabilities that are keeping them out of the workforce. And today, with the economy, there's a pressing need to get more workers into jobs. I mean, over the last 10 years, Vermont has had a loss of about 16,000 jobs. At the same time, 16,000 fewer workers than 10 years ago. At the same time, our population has grown, and that's creating a real question. And the governor has asked us, how is Vermont's economy going to manage with fewer workers? And I think the answer is to provide more training to get more people into the workforce. And that's what ReSOURCE is really trying to do.
Now, people might be familiar with you because, of course, of your storefronts. So where do proceeds from donations and the store purchases go?
Well, I mean, a lot of those purchases just fund the rent, pay for our spaces, pay for heat, pay for the staffing. But anything that's left over, we're a nonprofit organization, so we don't really have a profit, so to speak. But if we do strive to have these social enterprises generate revenue to support the poverty relief and the job training programs. One of the programs that people may not be familiar with is our essential goods program. So we support people who couldn't otherwise afford, basic and essential household goods, everything from a stove or refrigerator, a bed to sleep on, pots and pans to cook with. And as well as building materials. I mean, in fact, that's actually one area of expansion. Originally our mission was only, our focus was only on household goods, and it expanded in 2001 to include building materials. And then it grew in terms of geographically with the expansion to Barrie and then to Lamoille County, first Morrisville, and then we moved to Hyde Park. But I'm sorry, losing my train of thought there. But
we were just talking about the different programs and how it's grown from essential goods to, now job training programs.
Yeah, and how the proceeds, so any surplus there is used for those poverty relief. So we have about 30 plus partner agencies who actually apply to ReSOURCE for some of our essential goods budget. We give those agencies and their caseworkers vouchers that they can distribute to the people they are working with who are most in need. So those people can come to ReSOURCE instead of pulling out a credit card, as most customers do, or cash. They pull out a ReSOURCE voucher. So it's barcoded with one of our vouchers, allowing them to, in a very dignified way, make purchases that they otherwise couldn't afford to do.
Talk a little bit about the 4 different locations.
Yeah, so we've been in Burlington, started in Burlington on Pine Street, moved in 1995, then we moved just this past February. From 2001 to this past February, we were actually in 2 sites in Burlington. One was our building materials site, one was our household goods.
Right.
In February, end of February, we converted the building materials store that's in the old Public Works building to a household goods and building materials store. And we also purchased a modular classroom because we knew we wanted to keep our training programs in Burlington. And so that we set that up for Youth Build and our other training programs. And so that's really allowed the 339 Pine Street site to develop, even though it's a city-owned property that's committed as a staging area for the Pine Street extension. So it's a complicated site with some contamination. We hope to have long-term use of it, but that won't be decided for a long time, I'm afraid. So we had to move, and we'd been looking for space for a long time. So in March, we moved one of our sites to Williston. So we're now in Williston, Burlington, Hyde Park, and Barry. The Barry site we grew into in 2009 and developed a youth build program there. Also, all of our other training programs operate out of the Barry site. We actually own that building. It's a converted granite shed that we rehabbed, and it's really become I think an important part of that in the Barry community and serving a huge number of people, as has the site now in Hyde Park, where we expanded 2 years ago into a larger space and really have been attracting a growing number of low-income people, donors who want to get rid of stuff and want to put it to a good use, and also trainees who need new opportunities to get into jobs. So each of these sites, I think, has really grown and is becoming more and more successful. And I think the spread that we've achieved with this move recently to Burlington and Williston is going to make us more accessible to a lot more people.
So Andrew, tell us about the Youth Build program.
Sure, gladly. So Youth Build, we work with 16 to 24-year-olds, as Tom mentioned, who are no longer in high school, and through Youth Build, they're given the opportunity to earn a high school diploma. They learn construction skills, and they get a whole bunch of certifications that qualifies them for entry into that field when they leave. And they all serve as AmeriCorps members. So every one of our students is going to do about 700 hours of direct community service in their year with us, and they leave with an education award in the amount of about $2,200. That they can use for education up to 7 years in their future.
So how do ReSOURCE training programs serve the community?
Well, I think we're trying to bring together individuals who have barriers to the labor market and also meet the needs of employers, local employers. I think Tom mentioned, I know we were talking before we came on, employers, obviously ideal in constructions, and that's what I see most acutely. Employers are desperate for qualified people, and we really want to make sure that those jobs in construction or manufacturing or any of the other fields in which we're training people go to local people. So we're really trying to bring together employers, local employers who are so desperate for qualified people, and people who might have barriers to employment. And certainly, from a Youth Build perspective, not having a high school diploma is a barrier to employment. Not having basic construction skills, which we're providing, we're addressing that barrier to employment as well.
And so what's the success rate for the program graduates?
So historically, 65 to 70% of our students, you know, we enroll 32 students per year between our Barrie and Burlington locations. 65 to 70% of our students will graduate, and which is good. We would like to do better. We always can strive to do better. I think when you consider that 100% were not successful in completing high school, I think that puts that statistic in a little bit of perspective, and you know, speaks to the effectiveness with which we're training people. And then those who end up graduating from the program, you know, we have fabulous success rates placing in employment or post-secondary education. You know, upwards of 90% of program graduates within the first 3 months after graduation are moved directly into employment or some kind of further training.
Let me add on to that, the sort of universe of job training programs at ReSOURCE. Youth Build fits within this workforce development side of things. We have both work experience programs, which are give sort of entry-level experiences to people who maybe have never worked. We then have the more intensive programs, which Youth Build is a part of, where the goal is really a job at the other end.
Right.
But we really know that we need to create that pipeline, especially for individuals who've never worked, have no experience, and need that base level opportunity to be successful. And so it's really a continuum. So those work experience programs, the outcome is not necessarily a job, although that sometimes happens. Often it's an enrollment in another training program. Sometimes it's ours, sometimes it's someone else's, maybe it's on to college. But it's that continuum of experiences that is so critical, and I think has helped our success. The other thing is that the trainees are all supporting the overall mission of ReSOURCE. And so while they are learning new skills, Andrew was saying they all do community service. You know, the Youth Build students are building affordable housing, they're weatherizing homes, they're installing solar systems. Most of that work is done for low-income people, and so they feel tremendous pride and satisfaction in what they're doing. That motivates them to be more successful and stick with it, and that's one of the most important lessons we're trying to teach, is the importance of that, you know, stick-to-itiveness.
Right. And so another pillar of ReSOURCE's mission is poverty relief. How might someone in need get help?
Well, one is through the job training, right?
Yeah.
And that's a key way we reduce poverty and is create new opportunities so that you have the skills to be employed, support your family, and that's one of the most critical ways. The second is that essential goods program, where we are giving away stuff to people who otherwise couldn't afford it. We also do disaster relief. So, you know, Hurricane Irene or Tropical Storm Irene went through the state. Other storms have gone through, flooded more specific, localized communities. ReSOURCE provided truckloads of major appliances, furniture, other things that people whose homes were devastated needed. And
we also helped to rebuild 7
right.
houses in Waterbury,
No kidding.
right after Tropical Storm Irene. Yeah, Youth Build did. We were there for an entire year after the storm. So,
I mean, and just in general, I mean, Youth Build is generally working on 1 or 2 major, you know, rehabs or new construction of affordable housing every year, along with a dozen or half dozen units of that are weatherized. There's a real range of scope. You know, some you can do a lot more smaller projects or a smaller number of larger projects. So, but you know, that impact, I think, in multiple ways is really you know, where we take a lot of pride in the work we're doing.
And so how can viewers learn more about ReSOURCE, including store locations, operating hours, if they want to donate items?
Yep. Well, one of the best ways to learn more about is our website, you know, resourcevt.org. There's information about locations, hours, contact information for various programs. So there's some videos showing specific stories. I get to see some of the trainees one of our recent graduates in the Youth Build program. You know, he did the construction training. I think he excelled at that. But his dream was to be a butcher. And so he's now apprenticed in a butcher where I go grocery shopping after work every day. So it's those successes that really make our work fun and rewarding.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining us today. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.